So hi everybody. This is the last talk of the day. So before to start, I want to thank the organization of Mobiconf for this amazing day and for giving us the opportunity of traveling here to Krakow, that is an awesome city. So thank you so much, Mobiconf, and hope that this talk will enjoy you and we're going to have another amazing day tomorrow. So I will go straight to the point. And I want to show you something. This is Tampa, Florida. This is the last February when a math teacher decides to run an experiment. So she asked her students to put the phones on the corner of their desk and go on the board, and every time that they receive a text message, a social media notification, or another notification, to make a mark. So the numbers are, in 30 minutes, 23 students receive 58 text, 182 social media notification, and 28 other general notification. So in half an hour, it's a total of 268 total disruption. And the funny story of all of that is that the school decided to raise awareness on the problem, and they make a post on their Facebook page saying, generating another 1,000 of a notification to the parents. Hey, the school of your son just posted for the first time in a while. And so they generated a lot of notification, and these parents probably called each other, and they texted in the WhatsApp group. Thousands of notifications. So from this small story, we can see how much distraction had an issue in our daily life. No matter what you're doing, no matter what's the time, what's your company, we are constantly bombarded of social media notification, email, Slack, and so on. The question is, what the hell we have to say to each other all the time? And this is why I want to take a step back, and I want to talk about information overload. What do we mean when we say that, and how we can measure it in numbers? So I go back a few years to 2008. Some information scientists did a research, and they found out that Americans, in their leisure time, they consume 34 gigabytes of data. A few years later, 2011, other information scientists found out that Americans at that time, they were taking in 5 times more information as they were used to do in 1986. So that means reading every day 174 newspapers. Do you have an idea on what is this number? No idea? So this is the time that you would need to watch all the HD movies that are on the web today. Don't. So huge waste of time. Not just entertainment that is affected by this problem. The nervous system of a squid seems to be so interesting that the researchers and PhDs from all over the world have written so far 54,900 papers. You can go in Google Scholar and you can find it out yourself. And the problem, as we've seen before, is that we do interact with all this information. And today you have probably already touched your phones more than 2,000 times. And you might say, well, what's the problem with that? My dear, I tell you what's the problem. Our brain is like a funnel. So we have an assigned bandwidth that is limited capacity of processing information. And other information scientists have been estimated that this number corresponds to 120 bits per second. So this, in our daily life, means basically this. We can't process too many functions at the same time. We can't walking, we can't watching the scene, and we can't read our smartphone in exactly the same moment. And we had also some Nobel Prizes involved in this, even many years ago. This is Herbert Simmons, and he said, a wealth of information creates poverty of attention. We have too many things to pay attention, and our brain dropped the focus. We are unable to select the right information in this huge amount of stimulus. And even when we do it, we are distracted by a new stimulus. And about this has been recently estimated that our attention span has dropped from 12 seconds to 8. We last less than a red fish. you know, this is not surprisingly when we talk about fake news. Yeah, I realize there is a lot of Trump in these slides. Yeah, you can understand, I guess. So in a world in which we have this overabundance of information, our attention is difficult to keep. We need fake news because the information needs to catch our basic emotion in order to be considered by us. So we have seen how much is big the information overload, and we tried to measure it in numbers, but now we're going to talk about how our brain works and how it reacts in front of all of this. So we've said before that our brain is a channel, and we have this limited capacity of 120 bits per second. So there are times in which we can actually get more than one stimulus at a time, and specifically, it depends by the bit rate consumption of the function that we use to elaborate those stimulus. So for example, now we're gonna do the first sound check. The function listen with the argument classic music has a low bit rate consumption. And we can assume that because you're currently able to process my speech while you're listening to the music, watching the landscape and so on. The process of my speech, it has been estimated to be 60 bits per second. The things change when there is
a great
Martin
American in whose
Luther
symbolic
King speaking.
shadow we stand
So
today.
I have to stop, because if I keep talking and talking while Martin Luther King is telling us why he has a dream, you can't understand both of us. So the two functions have an high bit rate, the two speeches there. They are over 60 bits per second, and you can't process all this information together. And I believe that this is very interesting, because this is telling us, depending what's the argument of that function, the bit rate can increase. And this brings us to one of the most crucial points of all of this, that is, the brain focuses automatically on what it thinks is the most important stimulus in front of us. So in other terms, if you don't choose the stimulus, your brain will choose for you. Let's do a game now. Let's test our attention. I'm going to play a commercial from Skoda, from the UK market.
To test just how much attention the attention-stealing design of the new Skoda Fabia actually steals, we left one parked on this ordinary road in West London. We wanted to see if its sharp crystalline shapes, bold lines, and lower, wider profile would attract the desired level of attention. Will the 17-inch black alloy wheels stop passers-by in their tracks? Will the angular headlights attract the attention of other road users? Will a crowd gather to check out its fresh, sporty look? Well, not quite. But did the attention-stealing design distract you from noticing that the entire street has been changing right before your very eyes? Don't believe us? Have another look. Did you spot the van changing to a taxi? How about the scooter changing to a pair of bicycles? Or the lady holding a pig? Let alone the fact that the entire street is now completely different. Didn't think so. So there we have it. Proof that the new Skoda Fabia is truly attention-stealing.
So what happened here? It's incredible, huh? So in front of this channel, that is our brain, there are millions of neurons that collectively are called attentional filters. So they deal with the environment, and most of the time, automatically, they select and decide what we need to pay attention to. So in this case, they narrow the focus on the car because the voice in the video was telling us, or them, this is the most important thing that you need to focus on. So they made our brain relax about the rest of the environment, because usually it doesn't change. And what happens is that we experience a cognitive blind spot. So thanks to these filters, we are actually able to narrow our focus, which is great. But if we don't use them on our, let's say, with our advantage, we can't get into failures. So let's go through 3 principles to survive in this era of the information overload of push notification. The first one is given to us from the famous architect, Mies van der Rohe. So neurons are living cells with a metabolism. They need oxygen and glucose to survive. So when they have been working hard, they experience fatigue. So every status update you read on Facebook, every tweet or any message that you get from a friend is competing for resources in your brain with other things and other decisions, like whether to put your savings in stocks or bonds, or where you left your passport when you're leaving home, or who probably deserves a promotion in the next annual review. So reducing the decision to make is key. And this is why Obama and many others, like Zuckerberg or Steve Jobs, were used to wear the same clothes every day. It comes from the fact that research shows that the simple act of making decision degrades one's ability to make further decision. So Obama, he wanted to focus his decision-making energy and leave the space for the most important one. You might say that Trump is actually doing the same, and this is true, but if you really look at how he wears every day, he's changing the tie every day with a different fantasy. So probably that's why we ended up with that stupid wall. But the question now here is how we can start in cutting the decision to make. What's the starting point to realize what we need to cut in our decision-making process that we do every day? So to cut decision, we need to define first what matters to us. And it's answering the question, who do you want to be when you grow up, aside from being an astronaut? And try to think for a moment. I want to do an exercise now with you. So close your eyes if you want, keep your focus, and try to picture in your mind the end of your career, the day of your retirement. You're probably in the office. Maybe there is a party or there is a dinner, and there are a couple of colleagues speaking about you. What would you like each of these speakers to say about you and your work? What's the impact you would like to leave in the company? And what's the unique sign you want to leave in the business and you ultimately in the world? When we answer to this question, when we know our mission, when we know our core value, we are able to understand what matters for us and what not. We discussed this in the talk this morning, in the afternoon. The first question for all of us is, what is important for us? So when we know our core values, we can finally adopt this matrix. This is a proposal, of course, and comes from Convey, that is the author of The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And he divided the activities in 4 categories, dividing urgent and not urgent, important and not important. So the first quadrant is urgent and important. In our daily life, in our industry, is typically an incident, is a SEV one. It's something that we need to deal with that right now, otherwise our customers will be upset and our reputation will be compromised. So when something like that happens, SEV one, we take an action that is satisfactory. For example, we roll back a release. And usually we should have an action that is in the second quadrant that is important and not urgent, which could be, for example, implementing a monitor for traffic spikes or something that can prevent the next accident to happen. And the second quadrant in this matrix is the most important one. Is the one that we want to have, like the one which we want to dedicate most of our time, because it's important and is not urgent. So here we need to take the best solution ever. We don't want to compromise, because it contributes directly to our core values and to our priority. The third quadrant is the one most interesting in the notification era. So it's the one that is distraction, urgent and not important. Do you realize what it means? We are doing things that are probably others' priority, we're not even us priority. We're going for a meeting because someone else called us and asked that this was very urgent, this has to be done ASAP, but probably is not important for us, right? And then there is Q4, which is waste, junk, is trivial work, is what we do just for immediate and trivial compensation, and that's it. So effective people usually work to have a very, let's say something that is 0 on the Q3 and Q4, they work to have a very light Q1 and a strong Q2. in my one-to-one as a manager, I hear a lot of time, I don't have time to do this, or I do not have enough time. And when we start diving into what are the activities, we find out that in reality, we classify a lot of things as urgent, even if they're not. And then there is a lot that is in distraction, so not important, because they're coming from others' priority. So this is where I think this matrix is a very powerful tool to organize your activities, and even for coaching other people in organizing their activities. So I go to the next principle, which is routinize yourself. Do you know what these two people have in common, apart from money? So they both employ layers of people whose job is to narrow their attentional filter, the thing that we saw before. So they have teams of executive assistants as extension of their own brain. They usually don't have to worry if they have to be somewhere else or talking to somebody else, because their external attentional filters, or the extension of their brain or their executive assistant, have already determined this for them. And I know that most of us don't have executive assistant. I don't, personally. So in that case, we gotta be the executive assistant of ourselves. And what comes in our help are routines. So setting up front the time in your calendar and deciding, for example, what you have to do every day, every week, or every month, depending what you prefer, can free up ourselves and yourself to decide on the fly what's the best action to carry on in the next hour. The ultimate goal of a routine is that we need to be okay with what we're doing, and we need to be okay with what we're not doing. There is a very basic principle that can help us in creating routines, and everybody knows it. No one applies it. It's like when we talk about Trump. No one votes him, but he's there every election. Same with Berlusconi in Italy. No one voted, always there. In the past, hopefully not in the next election. So creating a routine can really impact everything. Waking up at the same time every day, checking up emails and Slack at a specific time slots, instead of doing it randomly while you're doing a meeting and probably being distracted by notification and not able to finish the sentence that you are talking about. So when we create one, we need to eliminate the multitasking option, because what we really do when we multitask is just shifting the attention from one job to another. And instead, when we do one thing, we are unitask, and we are much more efficient. So when you plan a routine, make sure that you cover everything that might jeopardize your unitask activities. Are you a manager and you need often to be on Slack and answer to the people that report to you? Well, probably you can plan 10 minutes at the end of every meeting to catch up with your Slack notification and answer to these people. An inspiring example about routines over a week comes from Jack Dorsey. I'm sure you know him because he's the CEO of Twitter and Square. There was an article, I think it was 2 weeks ago, from the New York Times. They defined him as the Gwyneth Paltrow of the Silicon Valley. From that day, I'm still trying to understand if it's a compliment or what. But anyway, in 2015, he reveals one of his approach to boost his productivity that is called teaming days. So I think at that time he was managing only Twitter, and what he was used to do was having like every day a specific activity. So Monday was dedicated for meetings and management, Tuesday for product, Wednesday for marketing, and so on. So he said that he never leaves him with a question about what he should focus on. Dealing with interruption, he said also, it's easy because he can just push away anything that doesn't fit in the day's theme. Another crucial item of routines is, of course, creating your backlog. We know very well what is a backlog. We always use it in the team, but we rarely do for ourselves. So imagine you are carrying on a small stack of cards with you wherever you go. So you got an idea for something that you're working on, and you put it on the card. You remember that you have to do something later, and you put it on a card. You remember that it's your own birthday, and it goes on the card. So freeing the mind from all these thoughts can really create some space in your mind to create ideas instead of hold them. So David Allen is the author of Getting Things Done, calls this activity clearing the mind. He also says that categorization is one of our productivity tool in our brain, and we can use it to categorize, of course, our backlog and do it, delegate it, defer, and drop it. So between routines and to-do list, you can be able to reach this point, that is, be a grandma. So every time I meet my grandma, I feel like she has the superpower of dedicating her full attention to me. When I talk to her, she's not distracted by the phone, by the Apple Watch, or she doesn't get any Slack messages or anything at all. She's fully with me. And that's so cool, because eye contact, nonverbal behavior are all details that today we're losing because we are too much distracted by the surrounding technology, or even sometimes from our own thoughts. So in this, push notification play a huge role, and while creating your routines, spend some time to set a notification of all your application. So I'm sure you remember when this happened. It was 2010, and Apple released for the first time APNS. We finally got the power of sending and receiving push notification. It was amazing, right? But then it was a few years later, in 2012, when personally I switched off all my email notification. I remember like the excitement of the first day, we got push notification, the email. I don't have to open the app or load the website. And it was extremely cool. But then after a few years, they kind of screw my life. Like I was getting them at every hour in the night, and I was constantly thinking about work, and I didn't want that. So I had to switch them off. And today I keep the same rule. I don't get any kind of email notification. If I want, I go check. If I don't want, it's okay. And I want to share some other tricks that I use. I customize, for example, or my Slack notification, and I get messages for the channel that I am interested in. I have different kind of settings for the phone and for my laptop. And when I want to get some focus, I use the do not disturb mode that is here in the Mac, so I can focus on what really matters in that moment for me. So the very last section, that is the most relaxing one, and is about disconnecting. And I believe that as a manager, we never put enough emphasis on this aspect. There is a company in New York, it's called Conversation. It's a famous marketing service company. The CEO is called Frank O'Brien. And he has a very radical approach to the frenetic pace of the workplace. So what he does is once a month, he gathers each employee of the company and in a room for the full day. He generally organized offsite. So phones are prohibited, emails are banned. There is no agenda. So it's it seems like the anti-productivity meeting by definition. And instead, he thinks that this is very powerful because the goal of this meeting is simply to escape and talk. This Monday, because we usually organize this on the Monday, is the first Monday of the month, is called Do Not Call Monday. So every customer knows that even if they're gonna call, they're not gonna get anything out. And he does this because he thinks that people can't figure out what really matters for them and for the company, and especially for the company, of course, if they're constantly on call. They need space to figure out what really matters. And it seems obvious, right? Can you tell me when was the last time in which you just sit and think without doing anything else? Without watching your phone, without watching Netflix, like nothing at all. Thinking. It doesn't happen anymore. And it doesn't happen because if you think, there were, like in the last years, we had a lot of changes. Before, if we were waiting for a flight or we were waiting for the dentist in the waiting room, we were just there probably being bored. Today, instead, we have always at least one gadget. There is the smartphone, is the iPad, or anything else. And by abolishing any chance of being bored, we have also lost the time that we used to have for think and process. But here is the good news. Another example, and this time is the CEO of LinkedIn, is Jeff Weiner. And he schedules up to 2 hours of blank space every day in his calendar to fight with back-to-back meetings. And he understood that he wanted this kind of blank space when he realized that his days was just like going from one meeting to another, and he didn't have any power of controlling his own day, but he was controlled by the agenda. So if it's yoga, if it's meditation, if it's some blank space in your calendar, make sure you have the escape. Make sure you have the space to escape in your busy life. As last, I want to show you the power of disconnecting. So I will ask you to not look at your phone for the next 60 seconds. I know it's very hard, but I will ask you to close your eyes and just focus on your breath and anything else. Don't engage with any of your thoughts. Just watch them. So thanks so much for joining this moment. I hope you get some rest. And before opening to question, if you are interested to know more or reading further, these are the books that I use for the presentation. And the first one is what is like kind of my Bible. I love the first book. And the second one is very useful if you want to know more about information overload, but even about how our mind works. And the last one is great for getting things done and organize your time efficiently. About me, because I didn't say anything before, so I work in Zendesk, and I'm engineering manager for mobile apps and shared services. One of my team works also on push notification services, and that's it. If you want to be in touch with me, that is my Twitter handle, or you can reach me out on LinkedIn. Question?